officially welcome to Confidential Information. Can it be in your portfolio? My name is Gabi, and I thank you all for being here. I'm very excited to learn about how to handle confidential information in UX portfolios from Debbie Levitt, CXO of Delta CX. It's hard to do her justice in introducing her, so I'll let her do that. What I will say is that she's helped me and countless other UX professionals in sharing her knowledge and tirelessly fighting the battle towards customer centricity. So thank you for being here. Now, before I pass the mic to her, I will introduce CPHUX, the organizer of this event. CPHUX stands for Copenhagen User Experience, and we're Denmark's largest UX community, with the goal of raising the industry standard of UX. We do it through 3 missions, the first one being creating transparency around UX. We do that by opening a Danish UX event calendar so you know where to learn from and who to join. There, we also publish and organize our own events. And if you remember, you have free access to all of them. Also, if you're lucky to be in beautiful Copenhagen like me, you also can rent for free our books and listen to Why UX podcast wherever you are, and even if you're not a member. And there, recently, we have had some members talking about how they got into UX and what they do. Also, when we record our events, they're available to members in our webinar library, but this event will be shared by Debbie as well, so we hope it has a bigger reach as well. Then we try to unite UX professionals through our member-only events, where you truly feel like you're a part of the UX community. And we collaborate with Danish UX mentors, because we know mentors are invaluable in both professional and personal development. And lastly, we bridge the gap between UX professionals and companies by publishing UX job market report. So if you're a UX professional, you can see how much are maybe others in my position earning and how much maybe I should be learning through our interactive metrics. We also have the only UX focused job board in Denmark, so you can spend more time thinking about actual job search instead of browsing through a lot of different types of job boards. To scale it back to this event, after our introductions, we'll jump into the talk by Debbie. And during her talk, I'm sure you'll have questions. So I invite you to ask questions in Slido using this code. I'll also share the code in the chat. So please write your questions there, as those are the ones that we'll address in the Q&A. As the last PSAs, we'll have a LinkedIn follow-up tagging Debbie and having a summary of what happened here. So join us there. And in case you're not aware by now, this is being recorded. So just so you know. Without further ado, I'll leave you to Debbie, and I'm excited what she has to say.
I have things to say. Thanks for including me. And let me just share my screen and let's make sure that works. Just a reminder to everybody that we are recording this. It's also going to go up on my YouTube channel, so you will certainly want to mute your microphones. And I do recommend possibly turning off cameras if you don't want to be recorded and on a YouTube channel later. Just a suggestion. Let me get my slides ready for action. I wrote some slides for y'all, and there's about a dozen of them, and then I'll be checking out your questions. So I am calling this Confidentiality, NDAs, and Your Portfolio. I thank you for the introduction. Just a couple of other things about me. I've been doing CX and UX strategy, research, and design for decades. If you're not familiar with me, my company is called Delta CX, and we are a full-service CX and UX agency and consultancy. We often go into companies and try to help them improve their CX and UX practices and programs and improve customer centricity, which is why clients call me Mary Poppins, because I fly in, fix everything I can, sing a few songs, and fly away to where I'm needed next. Please also note that I tend to say CX and UX interchangeably. I don't want to fight or die on the hill of who's a customer and who's a user. They're all in our ecosystem. We need them all. I don't want to fight over that today. Also, you will see these little camera icons on the bottom of my slides, and that just tells you my slides are done animating. For people who love to take pictures of slides or screenshots of slides, you'll know they're done when the little camera comes up. UX. And also, I'm not a lawyer. So we are going to be talking about some kind of legal adjacent issues today. And I just want to make sure that people understand that I'm not a lawyer. I don't have any law training. I can't give you legal advice. I'm just a regular person who can read contracts and understand them. And I'm explaining them to you as I understand them. But that means that my main advice to you today is talk to a lawyer, especially when you have a contract or agreement that where you're not sure what it's saying, or you don't really understand it, or you're not sure if you should sign it. Nothing replaces a lawyer's advice. No cool YouTuber, no LinkedIn post from a YouTube leader. Nothing replaces a lawyer who understands business law for the region where your company has its main office. When it comes to matters of privacy, confidentiality, and non-disclosure, you have two goals. Number one, don't get sued. And number two, don't ruin your reputation. Let's dive in. Confidentiality agreements and NDAs vary, but usually everything that isn't public is confidential. This may include company strategies, plans, designs, concepts, research, experiments, marketing, innovations, inventions, successes, failures, sales numbers, and pretty much any information that the public doesn't have. Ask yourself this: can a customer see this information? Or design? Does the public know this information? If not, it could be confidential. I once had a contract with a famous company, and part of the confidentiality was that I couldn't tell anybody I worked on a project for that company. I can't name them. If you didn't read and understand what you signed, you might think you can put this on your LinkedIn, in your resume or CV, and in your portfolio using this company's name. And you would be wrong. If your contract says something like this, you can't name them. Perhaps you can say you worked with a Fortune 200, or you worked with a well-known media streaming platform, or something general enough that we still don't really know who it is. How long is confidential information confidential? Your contract will say, but very often it's forever. If this information, project, or data never becomes something that the public or customers can see, talk about it. Some contracts will have an expiration date for confidential information. Sometimes it says you have to keep something a secret for a specific amount of time, like 2 years or 3 years. Make sure you understand what you're signing. If you don't understand what is confidential and for how long, talk to a lawyer. Let's say that I'm interviewing you for a job. I'm the hiring manager, and you share confidential information when showing me or talking about your previous work. Thing one, you just taught me that you don't keep secrets. You will share confidential information if you think it will help you get your next job. Now I don't really want to hire you. I need someone who will keep our company's information confidential. Thing two, I might know someone at the other company. CX and UX are really small worlds. I can say, hey, Sammy, I just interviewed Pat and they told me a story about a project you're working on, but I don't remember seeing that on your site. Did they share private information? And remember that putting a password on your portfolio or website does not help. You shared confidential information. You probably gave that password to people you don't really know that well, like recruiters, hiring managers, and HR people. Now the world gets really small, since this is even more people who might recognize that this is confidential information. They can screenshot it. They could post it somewhere. They could email it. And this will have been your fault. You can put a password on your portfolio, but if your case studies include confidential information, you are still breaching the agreement you signed. During one of my Tuesday Ask Me Anything sessions that I do live on YouTube on our new CXCC Customer Experience Customer Centricity YouTube channel, I also do it on LinkedIn, someone asked me if I thought it was fair that they were fired from their job. They had asked teammates if they minded if they showed some of their work in the portfolio. The teammates supposedly said yes, so this person showed some of their work. When the manager found out, their job was terminated immediately, and I'm sure they were told to take their portfolio down. They were surprised by this because their teammates said they could share this information. But do your workmates have the right to go around a legal document? They probably didn't understand confidentiality. They didn't know what you signed, or they just didn't know any better. Please remember that the only thing that matters is a signed document. Did you sign something promising to keep information confidential? Then you have to do that, even if your manager or a teammate says you can share it. If it's okay for you to share information, get that in writing. That should be a signed document. That way, if lawyers come after you later, you can say, look, I've written permission. That is way better than, I have no proof of this, but a coworker said I can share this information publicly. Normally, before anybody sues you, you get what in America is called a cease and desist, also known as a C&D. These are pretty standard, and you can even find templates for them online. A lawyer will tell you that you are in breach of copyrights or trademarks or trade secrets or confidential information. It will say what you did and with which information, and it will normally ask you to take everything down or stop talking about whatever the subject is. I have sent out C&Ds. Someone once used in a conference session title something way too close to my registered trademark, the 4 Horsemen of Bad UX. And I only found out about this because people started emailing me to ask if I'm working with this person or if I had something to do with their presentation. Of course, I didn't. It was just this person ripping me off again. Although this person sent me a number of unpleasant emails in response to my C&D, they did immediately change the title of their conference talk. That was all I was looking for, and they did it, so I didn't sue them. But if the company thinks that even if you stop sharing secrets, you have still badly damaged the company, they could sue you. It's not likely, but you just need to Google a few phrases to find people who have been sued for breaching confidentiality agreements. Often, the damage leading to lawsuits is real, and it's big. It's usually way worse than oversharing in a portfolio or job interview. In many cases, but not all cases, it's someone going to work for a competitor and telling that competitor things about the previous company that were private. And by the way, never do that. And yes, if you really mess this up and the company believes that what you did damages them, they can sue you for all kinds of money. They don't care how much money you have or don't have. They can sue for the amount that they feel matches the damage you've done. This is where things get scary, and it's okay to be scared. Lawsuits are scary. That's a reminder that you don't want to get sued and you want to do the right things. Let's use an example. Imagine you're working at an e-commerce company who's trying something innovative in their app. You helped design part of that app. You put some of the design work in your portfolio, even though this feature hasn't been released yet and the public can't see it. You password protect your website. You take their logo off their designs, but we can all look at your LinkedIn and know which company this was. You are definitely breaching confidentiality. Now, let's say that the company's competitors somehow find your portfolio and see this and decide they're going to make this feature too. They might even make a better version of it. Now, competitors are releasing something possibly even before your company does, because they learned your employer was working on this new feature thanks to you. Does this cause damage to a company? Could they have lost business or money over this? It's certainly possible. And that's where just asking you to stop might not feel like enough. A company might want to sue. Here's a bonus tip. If your portfolio shows real photos of people you interviewed or observed, I will know you don't understand confidential information. Sometimes people say to me, well, that's my brother, and he said it was okay. If that is not really clear in the caption of the photo, I will assume you gave people a consent form that said that the interview will be confidential, and then you showed a screenshot with their face because you thought it would look good in your portfolio. You breached confidentiality. Similarly, I just saw a portfolio where someone put the names of the participants in their study. Maybe they thought if they only used first names, it would be okay, but it's not. Call them Participant 1 or P1. Please don't call them Julia or TJ. Here's a screenshot from a session I did. First of all, there's nothing confidential on the screen. The participant is in an incognito or private browser window, so we don't see their browser's account, photo, or name. There's nothing in their browser bookmarks that tell you who this is. Next, they're on a public website, not a private prototype or concept. This page is not a secret. And third, I have put a giant meh emoji over their face. Given the technology we have now, I would imagine there are systems that can complete this person's face if I only put a bar over their eyes or blur them or mosaic them. But by completely blocking the whole face and beyond, you can't even tell what gender or age this person is. You have no idea where they are. That's how you do confidentiality with your screenshots. Make sure your portfolio and website don't show any PII, personal identifiable information. So, what can we do in our portfolios? Let's imagine that once upon a time, you were on the team that created Amazon's one-click purchase button. This was pretty exciting at the time and probably a secret project until this was released to the public. In a case like that, you can't show or talk about this project while it hasn't been launched or released. But once it's something the public can see or know about, you don't have to keep it confidential anymore. If a company you worked at a year ago finally launched something you worked on, you might not be able to tell the whole story since part of that story might be confidential, but you can certainly say more about this product or project once the public can see or experience it. The final product is not a secret now, but aspects of the project the public wouldn't know might still be confidential. Here are two examples from my old portfolio. The screenshot on the left is a banking website. The identifying logo, phone number, and other elements have been removed. You might not know, and you shouldn't know what bank this is. And I can get away with this because if you looked at my LinkedIn or resume, I did work for at least 3 banks that are on my resume and some that aren't on my resume. And if I'm worried that you might recognize the company colors, I can even change those. I didn't change those, but you might want to consider that. Even though this looks like a fairly typical banking website, this project was extremely confidential when I worked on it in 2016. A famous international bank was thinking about starting an online-only bank in America. Back then, this was a bit risky and scary, so they didn't want anybody to know who was behind this website or bank. So I didn't tell anybody who this was, and since I had so much banking work on my resume, nobody could really guess who it might be. I spent 1 month on this as a contractor and didn't put it on my resume. The screenshot on the right is from a company that does custom promotional products. There are hundreds of companies that will print your mugs, tote bags, water bottles, and more. You might not know if this is for one of them or a new company that will launch. I have mentioned this company's name since the confidentiality term of 2 years has expired, but I would be completely fine not mentioning their name. Who they are isn't that important. The work we did is interesting and important. You can take aspects of the story of the work you did and make it anonymous and unbranded. That might be good enough, but again, you would need to be sure that people can't look at your CV or LinkedIn and figure out who this was for. And you can only get away with making things anonymous when the work is fairly generic. If the banking website had some really innovative elements, then I wouldn't have shown that. But since it was just another banking website with checking, savings, and investments, there wasn't anything innovative or new there. The real secret was who the company was, not the products or services they were offering. Nearly all of my work is highly confidential. So, how can I create a portfolio project or case study when there's so much I can't tell you? I focus on the story of what I or my company did, and I leave out anything that would be a secret. You can see a few examples of the case studies on my website at customercentricity.com/case-studies. Let's talk about our case study from some work we did early this year for a startup still in stealth mode. That's heavy confidentiality. They're trying to innovate something, and I can't tell you anything about that. So I have to speak generally about the work we did and why we made certain decisions, all without telling you what we learned in the research or what the company should or might do with that information. For example, I can tell you how I planned the project and how well we did sticking to the timeline and the budget. People love images and other screenshots in case studies, so I can break up the text with something like this. Then I have some text about how we did the project. Nothing here is a secret. We met millennials in America who have a little money. We spoke to them in English for around 60 minutes. We used certain tools. I can tell the story of what we did without showing you the questions we asked or the answers we got. We made a Miro board, but this is purposefully small and blurry. I will not show an image that people can enlarge or see more clearly, since everything on this board is a secret. Another secret, oops, sorry, wrong button. Another secret is the ecosystem map, where we basically invented the startup's business model, products, and features. You can zoom in on that all day long and it will look like this, blurry and lacking details. You also don't know the company's name, but this helps our case study or portfolio piece have some visuals for people who like to see that we make diagrams or artifacts. In closing, when in doubt, leave it out. If you are not sure you can say or show something, don't. If you're in an interview and a company wants information that you should keep secret, apologize to the company that you can't share those details. I like to say things like, I'm sorry that I can't tell you about that. I'm sure you understand. If this were your confidential information, you wouldn't want me to share it in a job interview. And thanks for attending. Check out deltacx.com. We've got our events, which are lots of free webinars, cxcc.to/events. Don't forget my new book, Customers Know You Suck. And I do offer free 30 minutes of coaching to anybody once. After that, I do charge. And with that, I guess I will stop my screen share and take some questions.
This was such a good overview of all the traps and things we might find ourselves into and what is and isn't confidential in the first place. Thank you very much. I'm sure there will be interesting questions on this. I invite again everyone to share questions. Let us check if there is something in Slido already. Yes, there is. Oh, questions are coming in, so I'll just say them out and you take them over. First one.
Sure.
What should I? Yes. So, what should I do if I only have one job in my experience, and it's easy to tell which job my case study is from?
Yeah, in that case, you want to follow the advice that I just gave, where you can always speak to your process and you can always speak to some of the decisions you made, but without revealing the details behind it. You're just going to have to get a little bit vague about some of these things. If that one job has made your designs public, if I could sign up to this company and see these designs, then these are not confidential. Once the public can see them, now, again, I'm not a lawyer, double check with friendly lawyers, but in general, once something is public, it's not confidential. It just can't be. I can't say, hey, everybody, I published this book, you can buy it, but it's a secret. Don't tell anyone. It's out there. So when stuff is out there, you can talk about it, but you have to be careful of how much of the inside work story you tell, because we don't know what happened in your company. You might not want to tell a story of, and then the terrible VP of product did this thing, don't do that. So just, you have to tell a very more generic and neutral story. Don't name anybody. If something went wrong, you have to be very generic about it. Like, unfortunately, due to time and budget constraints, rather than Jim over there cut my budget or Sally cut my budget. So the bottom line is, you can only show and talk about things that the public can see and know, and you want to really limit anything that you might talk about that the public can't see or know. Unless you sign something where the time eventually runs out. If your agreement says this is only confidential for 2 years, then in a year you can talk about what you did last year.
Yes. An interesting one that's quite upvoted. If the company has released images of the final design, can you show a similar looking wireframes to show the lo-fi stage of your process? So that's kind of reinventing what you actually did in the company. How do you approach that?
Yeah, I would probably say you can. Now, again, I'm making a judgment call here, and I'm not a lawyer, but I would say if your wireframes are similar and they don't include anything that is that is secret. Like, let's say, for example, sometimes you wireframe something and there's an interesting feature, and someone says, "Oh, we don't have time for that feature. Take it out." And you have a wireframe where that feature was still there, but that feature didn't go to the public. So just double check your wireframe to make sure that what you're showing is close enough to what the public saw, that you are not spilling a secret, that you're not showing something that you worked on, that you had an idea or a concept on, but that it didn't go live. So, and remember, you can always redo the wireframe. You can say, this is a variation of my early wireframe to remove a confidential feature that never got released. Fine. This is why we've got captions under images in our portfolios. To me, it's a best practice, and I don't know why some of you don't do it. When you put up an image, give me some words underneath it to tell me what's going on here. And you can always say, this is not the exact wireframe at the time, but I have anonymized this, or I have removed a confidential feature that has not yet been released. So I would say you probably can show this. You just want to go back and double check that you are not sharing anything where the company would go, you showed what?
Don't alert the lawyers. Bailey asks,
Exactly.
Yeah. Bailey, this is more of a personal one, I guess. On, have you ever broken confidentiality on accident, or have you ever known someone who did? What did they do, or you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very easy to breach it by accident, but you just have to, listen to your own thinking, and it's okay to answer interview questions a little bit more carefully. Sometimes when somebody asks me something, I might say, let me take a moment to think about how I want to tell that story. And go ahead and put your thoughts together or make some notes. There's nothing wrong in a job interview with having some notes about some things you want to remember to say about a project. There are definitely times where people have shown things, or I've shown things. The whole world is doing this. Sometimes it works out for us and sometimes it doesn't. I have been contacted by a lawyer. I just happened to win that argument. But, you're less likely to win an argument with a lawyer. I grew up in a family of lawyers. I'm extremely comfortable having a discussion with a lawyer, and I usually come out pretty well. But I don't recommend that to other people. You might not be comfortable having a discussion with a lawyer. You might not win that argument. So I would say, yes, we're all going to make that mistake at one point or another. We just want to minimize it and reduce it as much as possible. We want to be prepared to say things if they say, oh, looks like your company was mostly talking to millennial women. Was there a reason you focused on that audience? You have to think for a moment. Is it public knowledge that my company focuses on millennial women? Yeah, it's pretty clear from our website. That's our target audience. I don't think I'm saying something, sounds antsy to talk with a lawyer. Yeah, but when the lawyer's on your side, they're much friendlier, Kat. When the lawyer's on the other side, that's when they're a problem. So you have to stop and think, how is it clear from our website or our products or our marketing or our advertising that we go after millennial women? If that seems to be a well-known thing, then you could say, oh yeah, you can tell from our website that millennial women are a key target for our company. But if your company is thinking about getting into products for millennial women and you haven't been doing that, that could be a secret. And you'll have to be careful about that. You might need to turn your case study into saying, we were targeting a certain gender and age group, which was a new audience for our company. So remember, you don't have to say these words. No one will make you say these words. And if someone says, oh, that's interesting, can you tell us which audience and age group? The answer is, I'm sorry, I can't share that since it was confidential and something the company was working on behind the scenes. No one can make you say this. If someone says, well, we need to know this or we're not going to let you work here, you say, well, thank you for helping me better understand your company's ethics, and I will happily not work here. And so, I think that no one can make you say these things. No one can make you answer these questions. Go with what my second to last slide said. I'm sorry, I can't share that information with you. It is still confidential. And, if this were your confidential information, you wouldn't want me to share it just because I'm in a job interview. And a lot of people go, yeah, I get it. I've never had someone fight me on that. I've never had someone fight me in general, but we have to do these things because we think if we don't share or overshare, we might not get the job. But I've heard too many stories about jobs that weren't even real. And in some cases, companies are trying to get information out of you about a competitor, or they're trying to get some free work out of you from a design challenge, or they're hoping to see a secret design from somebody else. You don't have to say yes to this stuff.
Yep, that's true, where you want to look credible, like I truly did this process, so I have to share as much information to make you believe that I truly did it. Yeah, that sounds familiar. Now, this is an interesting one of, if a company shares their product information where I was an intern, can I share my UX design on my portfolio, but with further improvement? So I guess that's like I have an insight on the project and maybe I have an ideas of how it can be improved. That's an interesting area.
It is an interesting one. And I think that's for you to decide. And I've actually done that. So I used to, many years ago, I used to send eBay recommendations for their website. And they usually ignored me. And what I would do is post them in my blog. And I would say, here's an idea I have about something that I think could be really an improvement for the eBay website. There's nothing that says that has to be private. I mean, people post stuff. I mean, this was pre Behance and Dribble. Now Behance and Dribble are freaking full of people redesigning poop they know nothing about, and so we do this. Doesn't mean it's good, doesn't mean it's bad. Sometimes companies are a little insulted by it, like, what, you think what we have isn't good and you know how to make it better? You don't even work here. But So yeah, I think I would just be very clear that this is the work that you did while at the company. This is the very similar version that went live, and you can always screenshot the live one. Make sure you screenshot the live one before they change it again. Have that moment in time archived. And then you can say, without sharing any confidential information about the company, if I were to take this design even further, I think I would do this, this, and this. Now, the problem is I would want you to say why, but you might not be able to say why. You might have inside research information that says the company's moving into a new market, or the company found in their research that something was or wasn't a good idea. You can't say, well, our research showed that we really should have done this, so I went and did it. You shouldn't do. So you're just going to have to be careful when you're showing your new design, because if I'm interviewing you in a job, I say, well, why'd you do that? And you might be like, I can't tell you. You might have to end up saying something like, well, from working there, what are you going to say? I have some inside information that tells me this is a better design. Then maybe you're not putting up that design, because now you're basing it on inside information. So I would say, start asking yourself these questions. What would happen if I were in a job interview and someone asked me about this? Am I going into a territory where I used inside information? So I would say, if you are, then don't put that up. If it's just some of your ideas that aren't based in inside information or secrets or internal research that the public wouldn't see, sure, you could say, and I had this other idea. This was just my idea. And I have this other interesting idea for this page, not based in any confidential information. So sure, but again, be careful. A lot of this is just about establishing boundaries, and UX people are generally bad at that. We stink at boundaries. We stink at saying no. And so we just have to make sure we are really thinking ahead. And if someone says, oh, well, did you have research that proved that this was blah, blah, blah? You have to decide, can I say that? Can I say that? You can say, we did some usability testing on this, but I can't speak to the results of that. There's nothing wrong with it, with admitting your company does usability testing. That's probably not secret. Many companies do that, but you probably wouldn't say, yeah, we usability tested that and here's what we found. That might be something you can't say, and you just have to say, I can tell you we did usability testing. I can tell you we used 5 people and UX tweak and an Axure prototype, but unfortunately it's, what we've learned from that is confidential. So, it's a lot of no and sorry.
No, it sounds like if you share your ideas into a project that you were a part of, you have to obviously share why would you make some changes, but think about if those insights that you are basing that changes on are confidential or not. Is it something everyone can know? Yep.
Yeah.
So an interesting one is the app, let's say the app person is working on is public, but it's subscription based, so it's pay to play, let's say. How about this scenario? What is public, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, that is usually still fair game. If the public can access this thing, let's even say it's a SaaS system and it's $12,000 a year, but someone could sign up to it. You could work at a big company, your big company signs up to it, you take a screenshot of it. This isn't a secret unless in signing up to the company, there's something in the terms and conditions, and we all know terms and conditions are long and slippery and nobody wants to read them. But unless there's something in the app terms and conditions that say, even though you're using this app and even though anybody on the planet could use this app is secret. This app is confidential. That's very unlikely, but you want to scan your own terms and conditions for something like that just in case. But that would be extremely rare and unlikely. Once the public can download it, use it, sign up for it, pay for it, try it out, and then, of course, hypothetically, screenshot it, show it to other people, write a blog post about it, make a YouTube video about it or whatever, it's out there. So I would say it is, again, I'm not a lawyer, but I would say it is not confidential when the public or the paying public can see it. And if they're not, signing a confidentiality agreement that says they can't show it. Like, for example, at my current job, we're doing some usability testing on some prototypes, and we've been telling the participants, these are confidential. You can't tell anybody you saw these. You can't show anybody what these are. You can't screenshot these. These are confidential. And in that case, even though this will someday be available to the public, they can't talk about it now.
So it comes back to interesting long pages of click agree to terms and conditions and figure out what those are in that case. Woo, always fun.
Yeah, that's the best way to go, which is another reason to know a lawyer and show it to them and say, can I talk about this?
True. Now, this one is kind of self-answering, but maybe you have a comment on it, I guess, as well, is I think it relates to your point of telling a story. You don't need to share specifics. You can just tell a story of how you did it. But what if the NDA mentions processes are confidential too? Are you allowed to talk about your design process in a portfolio in that case?
Say that one again.
So what if the NDA mentions processes are confidential too? Are you allowed to talk about your design process in a portfolio in that case?
Yeah, I think that is definitely one of those difficult questions because your design process is not proprietary to the company. Normally, when a company NDA, and again, not a lawyer, but normally when a company NDA or confidentiality agreement says processes, they really mean the special ways that the company has developed to do certain things that they wouldn't want competitors to know, because then competitors might try to use the same process or whatever the case may be. A design process is normally quite I want to say generic in a way. You know, we get information from our teammates. We open up our tool of choice. We are designing. We run it through usability testing. Like, this is not necessarily a secret process. So I would say this aspect of things is probably not secret, but you probably won't want to speak to anything else that happened in the company process. You might not want to talk about what engineers did or what product managers did or how you got budget or approval on something. They might see that as a company process, but chances are the design process you did at this job will be the same design process you do at another job and the same design process that tens of thousands of people use. So I would say, unless there was something really unique or special there, where it would be confidential, like, wow, this was kind of something interesting or groundbreaking my company did. Like, for example, I worked at one company where they used to run these 2-week innovation labs, and they would dump people in a room for 2 weeks and hope that at the end they came out with something innovative. Of course, they never did. But hypothetically, you probably wouldn't want to say, my company runs 2-week innovation labs where we put 10 people in a room and that's probably an internal secret process. But the idea that you opened up Figma and made some screens and brought them to life and tested them on someone, that's probably not a secret process. I can't, give you total permission on that one, because you never know what a company thinks is a confidential or a secret process. But to me, I think our standard UX process that we all do at every job is really not a secret.
Okay, so design process is a process of itself in itself, so that absolutely very true. Now something.
Yeah, I can't imagine interviewing someone and saying, "Hey, what's your UX process?" and someone going, "I'm sorry, I can't tell you that."
Yeah, that can't be confidential.
No. That's unlikely to happen. Sorry, go ahead.
I think, Yeah. I think a lot of these were about, like, we went from sharing designs, like mockups or whatever, and then the process. And this one is relating to actual data, because people also like to see results in quantitative terms in our portfolios. And the question is, aside from images, how could we present our crucial quantitative data? For example, conversion rate, ROI, and similar.
Only if you're allowed to. It could be confidential information that your conversion rate went from 2% to 2.5%. That might be confidential. The public might not know your conversion rate is 2%. So you might be able to tell a more general story. And thanks to this project, we measured that our conversion rate increased. I can't tell you the numbers, but it went up from Q1 to Q2, by a factor of X or whatever, or it increased, but I'm sorry, I can't tell you by how much. That internal data is confidential. And so remember, if the public doesn't know it, if I can't easily find out what your conversion rate is, or some of these other pieces of information that we get from metrics or surveys or data or analytics, then you shouldn't put those numbers out there because conversion rates are usually terrible numbers. They're usually low and embarrassing, and it could hurt your company or hurt their stock price, or excuse me, I've been talking all day, or other things. If you tell the world we have a crappy conversion rate, yes, I know you're proud of increasing it, but you're going to have to use funky math. If it goes from 2% to 3%, you're going to have to say, the conversion rate increased by 50%, but I cannot tell you the exact numbers due to confidentiality. So I think you have to look at some of the relativity of numbers rather than naming specific numbers if the public doesn't know. If your company is publicly traded and this is the type of information they do release, which means you would have to go read their publicly traded filing crap and know, then okay, you can talk about it if it's out there. If you can Google this or read the company's investor public data, then you can talk about it. But if the world doesn't know your conversion rate or the number of customers you have or things like that, you're just going to have to use relative numbers and not the real numbers.
That's honestly a quite genius way around it, because if you say percentage-wise, percent of anything, that's an increase anyways. I really like that approach. Now, when it comes to research as well, I would say, is how would you typically approach confidentiality around findings from research that you did? How do you include actual findings?
I don't share them at all. Yeah, if you go and look at my case studies, yeah, I won't include findings, because the problem is findings, insights, and the actionable suggestions that my company tends to give help companies shape strategy, help companies make decisions, help companies shape products and services and experiences. I can't tell you what those were if that product isn't live. If the product goes live, then perhaps I can say, now that this product is live, I can tell you that we happen to find, we happen to suggest to this company that they build a large amber cup. And, because our research showed that lots of people want a large amber cup, or whatever the case may be. That sounds like bad research, but y'all know what I'm saying. If the thing isn't live and people don't know about it, we shouldn't talk about it. So in general, you'll find that a lot of my case studies end with, and we delivered the data and had some interesting conversations with the client, because I can't tell you what those were. So you're probably not going to be able to talk about the insights and things like that, especially while this product hasn't gone to the public. And even when it does go to the public, you'll need to still be very careful about what you say and don't say, because that your research data might be used for other strategies or other decisions. And you don't want to give away too much where a company goes, hey, wait a minute, why are you talking about this? We're still working out secret stuff based on that.
Yeah, direct findings are a thing that also I don't think is that broadly shared. So careful with research findings, people. And I think when it comes to UX process, like telling a story of why it chose a method or why the thing that was appropriate without the findings is like the most important actual thinking part of our jobs. The findings come and however they come. By, I'll see who it is. And maybe one more. Oh, but this one is maybe more connected to how wrongly us as UX practitioners are handled in selection processes. That's an interesting thing to going into. But one question is, during job interviews, behavioral questions sometimes lead you to answer confidential information such as product strategy, based on what did you relate your process with, I guess. How do you handle such situations? Do you just say, I can't tell you more, or how do you
I won't
navigate?
tell them. Yeah. No, I won't tell them more because, and I don't even know why you're telling people product strategy if that strategy is not public. You know, sometimes we can go to a company's website and they show their roadmap. They show some aspects of their strategy. If that's out there, you can talk about it. If that is not out there, you should not be answering questions with product strategy, because remember, in a best case scenario, you're probably breaching confidentiality. In a worst case scenario, this is a fake interview and someone is testing you. And so, you know, this is something to really be careful about. I'm very nervous about people answering questions that include product strategy if that strategy isn't public. If your company is not putting out telling people strategies or telling people showing the roadmap, or if this didn't happen many years ago, like people have heard me tell stories about projects I did at Macy's in 2016. You know, I feel comfortable talking about that now because that is now so old. That's 7 years ago, where it's unlikely that whatever strategy we had then is the strategy Macy's has today. So many years have gone by. Macy's has changed a lot in that time. They fired our entire building, you know, so I'm comfortable talking about that because I don't think anyone is going to be angry that I'm talking about something from 2016. That's a chance that I take. It's always possible that someone could be like, "Why are you talking about that? We just restarted that old project," and I'm be like, "What?" But that is a chance and a risk that I take by talking about that and by saying it's Macy's. That's my choice. But you know, but I'm also comfortable taking on lawyers. So you should be much more careful, and you really don't want to talk about these things or these strategies. And sometimes, I mean, my Macy's work, I ended up with nothing for my portfolio. That was a bit of a disaster job. There wasn't anything I could put in my portfolio. Almost nothing went live. Everything was so fought over and everything. So what I ended up putting in my portfolio was because one of the things I designed did go live, and then they took it out. I tell the story of how I predicted that it was going to fail.
Oh.
And I feel that I can talk about that. 7 years ago, old news, unlikely for Macy's to be bothered by it now. It's not like someone's going to write on TechCrunch, you know, woman talks about Macy's 2016 project. That is not going to make TechCrunch headlines. So again, that's my decision to talk about it. That's my decision to include the name of the company. You probably shouldn't do that. I'm just old enough where I've noticed when companies want to come after you, it's usually something that happened in the last 2-3 years, sometimes 4, because it's still something the company is working on and trying to innovate, and they don't want you to give away those secrets. But chances are the weird crap Macy's did in 2016 are projects they either finished or abandoned. But again, that's my risk. Don't be like me. Don't take the same risk. I have a whole family of lawyers, so I got coverage.
Yeah, or if you do lawyer up and then see what happens. No. Um, this one has quite a bit of upvotes, but I'm not sure how this happens. Maybe poor poor personal management is what if you don't remember whether you signed an NDA? Should you track down your former manager?
Oh, say that again. There was a little blip on my internet. If you should you check with your former manager if you can say something?
Like in a case that you don't remember what was in your NDA, or if you even signed one.
Yeah, the downside to that is when you contact a company or your manager or a HR department or somebody and you say, "Hey, do you have a copy of my contract? I want to see what our confidentiality agreement is." You can imagine that all kinds of bells go off. This is absolutely a whoa, oh my God, everybody look out. Why does this person want to know this? Are they looking for a way to share our secrets? You definitely put yourself on a lawyer's radar. And so I think this is another good reason why we want to make sure that that we are just keeping good paperwork. We don't want to say to a company later where now I've done that. I've contacted a company and I've said, hey, it's been 2 years. Can I see a copy of our contract? I can't find it. Obviously, it's my mistake, but I've signed what feels like hundreds of contracts in my life, and sometimes one goes missing. Okay, it happens. Hey, I worked there. Can I see a copy of this contract? Sometimes they might say, why? Usually they'll send it. But remember, you're putting yourself on that radar. So that's why I would say, as much as possible, you don't want to open up that conversation. You just want to take that document, especially before you sign it, to a lawyer. So a lawyer can tell you what you can and can't do later, and you're not surprised. Or if you signed it anyway, and now you have it, now you see your lawyer and you say, how much of the story of my work there can I tell? But it definitely, you can write to them and say, I can't find my contract. Do you have a copy of this? You are opening yourself up to, you don't work here anymore. Why do you need that?
Yeah, and that's why maybe approaching, like if you work in a company that understands how UX jobs and our portfolios work, I think the approach maybe I took is getting permission while you're still there, and then like have a written permission to share what you want to share.
It's based on the contract. Yeah. You can, it has to be in writing, and it has to be the contract or something that came after the contract. You don't want a handshake agreement. You don't want that person said. Everything has to be in writing. You have to imagine if I ended up in court, what would be my evidence? Evidence is usually signed agreements. Sometimes evidence can be an email, but ultimately the signed agreement is the key evidence in these situations. And if you sign something that says you're not going to talk about this stuff, it's yeah, I've had some people breach my confidentiality agreement in working for me, and you can be sure that I will never work with them again. And when people contacted me and said, "Oh, I heard so and so worked for you, should we hire them?" I would have to say, you can hire them if you want. However, my experience was poor.
That's absolutely fair. With that, I'm good. I'll try to be good at timekeeping and wrap this up. I thank everyone for being here from CPHUX, and I'll give Debbie to say her final goodbye as well.
Well, thanks again to everybody for inviting me to do this. Bailey and Gabby and Helena and everybody, thank you for letting me be involved. Again, I'm still not a lawyer, so always best to speak with a lawyer who specializes in business and contracts. Don't ask your real estate lawyer. Don't ask your the lawyer who made your will or something like that. Make sure you're working with a business specialist lawyer, and make sure you're getting your questions answered. Lawyers are expensive, but I would rather you spend 200 euros, 300 euros, understanding what you're signing, than for you to have saved 300 euros and later be panicking, freaking out, emailing me, as some of you do, going, oh my God, I signed this thing. Now I'm getting this threatening email. What do I do? Or, oh my God, I never had a contract. Now I'm getting a threatening email. What do I do? So please, please, contracts are important. Understanding them is important. Have a lawyer on your side. There's no substitution for it. I don't care what freaking UX leader posted what to LinkedIn, because I've seen this crap where some guy goes, you're too small to sue. Go ahead, put your stuff out there. I've had enough run-ins with a couple of lawyers that I was lucky to win the argument on. Please don't do this to yourself. Don't listen to UX thought leader so-and-so on LinkedIn who said it can't happen to you. It can.
Excellent advice. And I'll just chime in from our Danish watchers who usually have access to they're part of unions oftentimes, and they do have lawyers. Please use them if you can. Thank you. Thank you very much, Debbie.
Good point.
See you around.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye,
Stay legal. See you later. Bye.
Bye.